Americans, what is American high school actually like? Is it really like how they portray it in movies? Superbad got the closest to an actual high school. My Russian girlfriend is always amazed that everyone has their own locker. She always thought that was just in the movies. I can confirm we all have lockers. My high school had all the typical groups of kids. Nerds, jocks, beauty queens, artists, theater kids. The only difference was that no one picked on or bullied anyone else. It just wasn't a thing to do. It wasn't a school pride thing. It just didn't happen. In fact, if you were known to bully or harass someone else, you were seen as an asshole, and it was questioned why it was so important to you to harass that kid. Edit. Wow, this got a lot of responses. I should clarify that my school is in an area where the predominant culture is, we'll say, extremely focused on academic achievement. Students fear their families more than each other, and any behavior that is seen as disruptive or not related to study or achievement is usually met with severe consequences, both physical and mental. I remember a girl just out of the blue breaking down sobbing in class because she said she could not afford to get less than an A on a test, otherwise her father would beat her. The movies lied. There have only been 3.5 times people have spontaneously broken out into song while I've been here. You know the school montage segment of Into the Spider-Verse? That's accurate for intensive/magnet schools. Yes, but actually no. At least in my high school, sure, you have the different friends groups, but they aren't the stereotypical groups like populars, jocks, nerds, and such. Also, there is not that kid that goes around pinning people to lockers or throwing people's books on the ground. That being said, there are fights which actually are similar in the movies. Everyone gets their phones out and records it until a teacher or someone comes to split it up. This is probably my school, but teachers are not usually pricks unless you are a prick towards them, and lunchroom food isn't complete trash either. I mean, it's not amazing, but it's edible. Edit. So I'm not going through all the comments and say what can just be said as a whole. Everyone's saying it's a lie about the food part, which is fine, but you need to remember that we all did and are going to different schools. This is just what is happening in my high school at the moment. Not nearly as exciting, and the drama is extra stupid. Plus, a lot of people are really immature, and I've never met a stereotypical bully or jock or nerd yet. It varies greatly depending on where you live, for one thing. For example, where I grew up, American football isn't really a thing that any of the schools in the area have. However, basketball and baseball are pretty big sports. One thing almost universal is that the cliques you see in movies don't really reflect real life. Everything is a lot more fluid and few people fully fit the stereotypes. Most of the jocks, of which technically I could have been considered one, I was starting third baseman on the varsity baseball team where I went to school, tended to be of above average intelligence and didn't particularly pick on anyone. The bullies of the school tended to be your more redneck types. Our head cheerleader/prom queen was a smoking hot blonde, sure, but she was also one of the nicest people you'd ever meet, especially to quiet and outcast girls, and only once got in trouble when she punched a bully girl who was picking on an overweight freshman girl. Every high school is very different, since funding that goes to education varies greatly depending on where you live, but there are still a few things that are pretty much the same at every school, like drug use and stuff like that. I've also noticed that movies tend to exaggerate the amount of bullying that actually happens at the school. It is nothing like in the movies. 90% of the student body do not look like they walked out of Abercrombie and Fitch. They've got acne, are actually not in their early 20s playing a teenager, and I think there are police officers or monitors everywhere. It's nothing like the movies. Where I go to high school, the jocks, geeks and nerds aren't separate groups. Like, I'm in a vocational computer and networking class with a football player. I can weigh in from the teaching side. The middle class high schools tend to be like you've seen on TV, with a jock clique and a punk clique and a drama clique, but also a large mass of average kids just living their lives. The higher class, richer neighborhoods you get, the more of a pressure cooker environment you see in the schools. More work, higher expectations, identity tied closer to familial wealth and academic success. The drama or geek. The lower class you get, the sadder things are. The worse the instruction is, the more crowded the classrooms are, the more the emphasis is just on getting everyone through to graduation, rather than their individual interests like sports or drama, let alone pressuring them to outdo one another academically. No, that's an idealized thing that isn't remotely true. The guys complained constantly about there not being any attractive girls in our school and looked shocked when girls retorted with there aren't any attractive guys either. Being nerdy isn't uncool like a lot of movies are portrayed. At least at my high school, 9 years ago, being smart actually made you part of the popular crowd. I was the same age as the kids in American Pie and Buffy. That shit came out right as we were graduating, and we had a blast identifying who all the characters in the movie were in our school. That movie exaggerated everything and made it all seem cooler and safer than it actually was, but they weren't entirely divorced from our reality. We related to American Pie in a non-serious way because it was a funny, exaggerated lampoon of our own behavior. And like the kids in those movies, we had a largely carefree existence. I was fortunate to attend an excellent public high school in a rural but prosperous little town. Like the movies, violence and poverty affected very few of us. Looking back on it, I suppose it was a rather charmed existence for most kids at my high school. And of course the kid we all identified as Stifler laughed about it at first but then was kinda pissed. Just like a Stifler would. Actually, not really for me. It's kind of just everyone has stuff to do, and there's no big group that bullies kids or a group of popular kids. It seems like everyone realizes we're all equally useless. I should mention that I'm friends with quite a few jocks, and I'm a pretty big nerd. Fights are minimal and most people look down on you if you bully or harass someone. Everyone knows each other, and so no one messes with each other, because that could mess up whole friend groups. There's no cliques like in movies, and there's no athlete nerd axis either. People mostly stick to themselves until lunch, and teachers are mostly well-meaning, if a little too eager to give out as much homework as possible. As a high school teacher, I would say it totally depends on the school. Movies hit on the extremes of what high school is like, but I definitely see all of it daily, just with less attractive / younger people, as people in high school are 14 to 18, and not 24 to 30 like some shows try to make it seem. Generally the jocks are still the super popular ones. They might not be dumb, but they are still usually the most outgoing, and have the most friends. People still bully other people for many reasons: weight, sexuality, promiscuity, etc. But now most of that bullying is done online instead of in person. Kids are more open about drugs, drinking, and sex, but mostly just because they don't think that they can get into trouble for any of it. And unless the school has a strict no phone policy, kids text / Snapchat / etc constantly. There is nothing like giving kids 10 minutes of free time and having the students text each other across the classroom instead of talk to each other.